Hi everyone, and welcome to another powerful conversation. I am absolutely delighted to have Kresse here with me today. I've been a huge fan of Kresse's products over the last few years, and been following her on her new journey into sustainability as well. So I'm delighted to have her here to share some of her insights. But Kresse, maybe you want to just introduce yourself first as well, because I know I won't have captured everything in that short intro.
Sure. My name is Kresse. I run a social enterprise that rescues decommissioned fire hose, among other things, transforms it into beautiful items like luggage, bags, belts, wallets, and then donates 50% of its profits to charity. I guess that's the starter for where we're at.
Yeah. So how did you land upon that as a mission for what you wanted to do?
I think all of these things come to you. Some things come to you over time, and some things come to you by degree. But I grew up in Western Canada. It was an absolutely amazing place, and I knew that that I think as soon as I left home and read Silent Spring and started to educate myself about what we were doing in terms of our relationship with the natural world, I knew that the direction of my life was going to have to go in that way. And then it was a question of figuring out, well, what skills do I have? What can I actually contribute? And what am I curious about? And when I first moved to the UK, I had this amazing opportunity to just really explore what I was interested in. And I found myself in the sewers and in a lot of landfill sites and waste transfer stations.
Wow.
I think some people would find themselves at, I don't know, Oxford Street or Buckingham Palace or the Tower of London, and I just didn't. And that was where I saw a fire hose. And I think it was then in that moment where everything crystallized, because I thought, this is a beautiful material. This is a durable material.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to die here, just because it can't be a fire hose anymore, that it can't be something else that's wonderful and useful.
Yeah, and I think so. I think it's those points in time when everything just comes together in a moment of pure clarity are really interesting. Is that the only time you've had that? How did that feel in that moment?
I think I get those moments all the time. I think Elvis would say this is like quite frustrating for him because I make up my mind about things pretty quickly. Like I would say I'm consistently somebody who's focused on the environmental issues, and I'm consistently somebody who's focused on ethical issues. But also, we were, what is the Dante quote is something like, there's a really, really awful level of hell that's reserved for people who in a time of moral crisis do nothing. And I just think you have to look around you at the climate crisis and the biodiversity crisis and rising inequality, and you have to do something. So every time I see an opportunity where we can fit and where we can make some kind of a change, that's then where we start to do that thing. So yeah, I have these moments a lot when a material comes in and I think, gosh, this is a no-hoper, but it's for us, like we can fix this.
Yeah.
Or when it comes to setting up an apprenticeship program, or when it comes to setting up, I think it's not something we're doing now, which is a real shame, but we spent a lot of time working on setting up a workshop within a prison setting because it reduces reoffending rates, and it's really important for people to have a job and a purpose and be in training. And just if there's something that we can do, I work that out pretty quickly, then I want to do it. And then I could become probably pretty frustrating to be around until that thing is done.
Yeah. So when I'm listening to you, I wrote an article recently on Ikigai, and I hear when you're talking about that, and I strongly believe that when what we're doing in our life connects just not only with our personal values, but it can have a bigger impact on society and humanity and all those things, that that's when we really do feel the most fulfilled. Yeah. But I suppose the sort of missing elements from what you say there, and something that is always going to come up for people is, what about money? How do you, when you have like the skills and they overlap with a mission and a purpose, where does your concern about, like, is this something that's going to make money and be sustainable? Is it going to work giving 50% of the profits back to the fire brigade? You know, all those sorts of things, I guess.
So money is a discipline. You know, being able to balance a spreadsheet is a discipline. It's not why you do anything. It's not the, well, it's the reason why some people do something, I guess,
Yeah.
but I don't find it particularly interesting. I think money is like WD-40. So it's not an objective, it's grease.
Yeah.
It makes things flow smoothly, but it shouldn't be the reason for anything happening. And yeah, there's no question that in that sort of ikigai triangle of, you know, skills and passion and problem, you know, marrying these three things together, that if you can't make any money doing it, it's going to be really hard to do. If you can't convince people to sponsor it, it's going to be really hard to do, because it, you know, let's not forget, it doesn't always have to be a business. If it's a purely philanthropic thing, and some things need to be, then you're going to have to just raise the money to make that happen. But I do think that the focus on money has been a unhelpful distraction for civilization over the last 100 years. I think the focus on wealth accumulation has been a distraction, because if we were all focused instead on how we could make the lives better for other people's grandchildren, then we would live in a completely different place. And I guess, you know, I don't really care if that sounds naive. I don't care. I'm 46 years old. I'm not naive. I create the world I want to live in. And I think it's naive to say that what we're doing is impossible or impractical, because the whole point of us doing it from 2005 onwards and doing it successfully is it is perfectly possible. You know, there's nothing extraordinary about me. There's nothing extraordinary. Well, Elvis is pretty extraordinary, but we're not that special. I think that's quite an important thing to say. There's often a hero status that's given to entrepreneurs, which we don't deserve. In a lot of cases, it's just luck. I was born in Canada. I had an amazing family. I had an unbelievable education. I had, you know, I've consistently had friends that never did anything but support everything that I ever wanted to try. I've got a partner that you know, loves and respects me and will back me in anything that I want to do. These are all things that are you know, that are lucky. I'm healthy. So what am I going to do with all that luck? I either have to acknowledge it and show gratitude through my actions, or you know, I'm not a hero. I'm just in debt. And you know, I'm in debt to the natural world. I'm in debt to the luck that I've had. And I think the debts I've got are so significant that I will never be able to repay them, no matter how long I live and how much I'm able to do. And that's kind of how we've set everything out here. But yeah, the money part is the boring part. But you have to just see it as a discipline. You have to set it up like a spreadsheet. You have to make sure that the amount coming in is more than the amount going out. You have to know how much things cost. You have to understand how cash flow works. But if you can run a spreadsheet, you can do that.
Yeah. So do you therefore believe that, I didn't want this conversation to be about money, but do you therefore believe that if all those other things are there, and you know how to manage your money, that enough money will always be there for you to achieve what you want to achieve?
Well, no, not always, because I also know I have some unbelievable peers who've set up what I think to be spectacular businesses, and for one reason or another, it hasn't worked out. And I wouldn't knowing these people as I do, I know it's not down to a lack of commitment or a lack of work ethic. Some projects require significant upfront capital, which means you've got to raise funds. As soon as you've raised funds, you've opened yourself up to the whim of that particular investor or investment group. And sometimes those investors are great and they want to stick with you for the long haul. Other times that can just totally explode. Yeah. And I've seen that happen to a lot of wonderful entrepreneurs where, basically when you take investment, it's like you're getting married. And marriages don't all work out. And certainly all relationships with investors don't all work out, especially when the values aren't aligned. If the investor is primarily interested in money and you're primarily interested in impact, I don't see how that's going to work. Yeah. And it's not always easy to tell those things when you just, when you really, really want the capital and you're willing to kind of be blinded, let's say, by how funny someone is or how stimulating and interesting someone is, and then you're blinded to, let's say, their not so wonderful attributes. So the money won't always come, but I think the biggest thing you can do is to always be totally honest with yourself and always have people around you that are helping you evaluate the situation consistently. Have people that are going to say, really, is that the right investor for you? Have people who are going to say, let's sit down and go through that cash flow, because I don't think you can pay for all of this. And this is actually something that I do with students all the time. I feel like in a lot of fashion and design programs, the students are focusing a lot on creativity and trying to develop their voice, but nobody ever talks to them about how they price things. I get students that go, well, I can make this for about £20, so that means I can sell it for 22. And I was like, have you eaten yet? Yeah, exactly. Have you set up a website yet? Do you know? Because people think, oh, I can just have a Squarespace website and it doesn't cost anything. I'm like, no, as soon as there's e-commerce on it, there's a monthly fee, and then you have to pay 2% or 1.5% to the credit card companies. And if you haven't thought of your heating bill at the moment, then that could end your business. We know of businesses that are going to the wall because they can't afford heat and power at the moment. Yeah. No, there's so much in what you say there. I particularly like the comments on consistency and continuously being aligned with your own values. And I suppose that in my head brings up something that's been in my mind quite a lot recently, which is about trusting your gut and knowing when are the right times to trust your gut when you're making big decisions. Have you had what are your sort of thoughts or experience with that? Yeah, well, I guess I've got two things, right? I've got my gut, but then I've also got Elvis's, and that's pretty. And we don't always agree on things and how we're going to do them. We have enough mutual respect to kind of step back, talk it all through, and work out what might be the best way forward. Yeah. But I think just one person's gut is not enough. I think it's really hard for solo founders to be off on these adventures on their own. I think what I know about myself for sure is that I don't have a big enough toolbox to do all of the things that are required to run a business. Elvis is better at human resources things. His gut is better when it comes to hiring decisions than mine is. His gut is better when it comes to, practical things like solving logistical problems. But when it comes to sort of like the big ideas or how we might get our message across or who we might collaborate with, that's maybe sort of more my forte. So I don't know. There's your gut, but then there's evidence. Yeah. And the other thing that we have now, after having done this for sort of 18 years, is there's a lot of data to back up what we do. We know so much more about our customers now than we did in the beginning. There's so much now that is not anecdote, that is real. You know, we know that our customers are 50% men and 50% women. We know what motivates the men to buy. We know what motivates women to buy. We know why our charity relationships are so important. We know why transparency is important. We know, we understand what the trust points are in the process for people, wanting to work with us and wanting us to be their bag supplier or their bag repairer. We understand those things way more now than we did in the beginning, because we have not just anecdotes, but we've got, data.
Yeah. So for anyone that's sort of starting out on an entrepreneurial journey, because I think you make a really interesting point there, is that once you've got the data, it's to some degree easier because you've got it there to back up what you're thinking. But when you started out, did you have hypotheses about who your ideal customer would be? And I guess how correct were they, or what surprises came up?
We had no idea when we started. And I think the thing that we did then, which was really important, is that we did a lot of live events. Obviously, if you were setting up a business during COVID, that would have been impossible. But we went to a lot of fairs. We went to a lot of, these events that are set up for young fashion companies to show their wares, like Pure London. There's these kinds of exhibitions and things like that. We went to a lot of things like that. I remember one that was particularly useful was the London Coffee Festival, because a lot of people were there for the coffee and the chocolate, but they also had a curated selection of really interesting brands that were there. And, that was 3 days of people who were there for coffee. So they're not they're just people who are interested in stuff, right?
Yeah.
Who were just coming by and asking questions.
Yeah.
And then we had, you start to develop data there, because we're like, oh, we had this one question asked consistently, which means that we've got to make sure the answer to that question is front and center on the website.
Yeah.
But also, and those questions aren't always the questions that you expect.
Yeah.
So you do have to. There is the digital side of data, but there's also the analog side of data. I don't think you can do any of this without going out into the world and getting people's firsthand feedback.
Yeah, I think that's really helpful. And everything.
It's why we still do events now. We still do workshops.
Really?
We have people come twice a month. We have workshop and farm tours, and it's great for us, and it's great for the team, for people to come here and just give their live feedback. This is what I love. This is why I like you guys. This is this. This is that. It's important to know what of our messaging is landing.
Yeah. I mean, speaking from experience, I obviously loved coming to do a workshop with you, but that was before you had the farm. So I will be coming again for sure, because I'm fascinated to hear about all of the farm side of it as well. What do you think's been the biggest challenge that you've faced on your journey so far?
I don't know. I think any of the single challenges, they're all surmountable. We've had obviously things that could have shut us down, and we've got every small business, we've got our war stories. Certainly our worst year was when we were really keen to buy our first workshop. We were based in Dorset at the time, in Bournemouth, and we found this amazing site and we were buying it. But in order to buy it, we had a small flat, and we sold the flat, and we had a commercial lease on a workshop, and we gave that up because we needed to basically have all of our funds available in order to buy this building. And basically on the day of exchange, the vendors pulled out, which was terrible because we had no place to live and the business had no place to live. And we had to go into overdrive, finding a temporary workshop, moving in with some friends of ours, putting everything we owned in storage, and then at the same time trying to find another site. And the other site we found was in Kent. So everything changed in a 6-month period. We went from being pretty happy to be in Bournemouth to being people who lived in Kent. And we then had this, a huge building to restore. We didn't know anything about restoring buildings, didn't know anything about living in a listed building, didn't know anything about how to repair a sash window. And we had to learn that pretty quick because there was 22 rotten ones and we couldn't afford for a carpenter to do it. So that was a tough year for us because we were trying to do that while moving to a new place and keeping the business going and bringing in our first ever full-time employees. It was just a crazy time, and coming to the farm has been equally crazy. But instead of the move to the mill from Bournemouth, we did just the two of us.
Yeah.
This move, we had a lovely team to help us make the transition, and it's I wouldn't say it's been smoother, but we worked on our own in it.
Yeah. So tell us a bit more about the farm, because I know before we started recording, you mentioned your background there, which is a real background, not a photo. So maybe you can just tell us some of the amazing things that you're working on at the moment.
It's a very sexy background. I'm in the plant room of our new workshop. So this is our renewable energy system that's behind me. The part of the reason for there was two reasons to buy a farm. One was that we have always thought that we wanted to be a net regenerative business, and we didn't understand how we could do that if we weren't personally taking charge of basically a failed ecosystem or a degraded ecosystem. There's offsetting, but that's something that someone else does. And we wanted to be the people who did it. So I didn't want to pay someone to plant trees. I wanted to plant them myself, which is very much our approach to everything. We're a totally vertically integrated business, and we make everything ourselves, including our packaging. So we started this look for a farm a couple of years before the pandemic. And the second reason for wanting to do a farm was because we thought, this will be great. We'll get a place that's got tons of buildings, and we will never need to move again, because we know moving is something we don't enjoy doing. And because it's called like farm diversification, like income diversification on farms, it means that there's generally less of a planning restriction on the buildings that you can put up. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, the farm that we found is in an area of outstanding natural beauty, which, I mean, hey, upsides, because
nice, yeah,
but it means that we have like more planning restrictions than for a listed building. But this site was great because there was no beautiful old manor house here. There was no oak framed Kentish peg barn to save. Everything here was falling apart. The septic system had failed. None of the buildings were insulated almost at all, and none of them were really spectacular or worth saving. And that meant that we could come here with it was grade 3 degraded pasture as well. It was the perfect farm for us because it was a farm that needed love and care and attention.
Yeah.
So we came here we were completely agnostic as to what we were going to grow. We just knew we were going to, create an abundant ecosystem. We're going to take a soil first approach to whatever we did. And the reason for doing that is because, much like the fashion system, the agricultural system or our food system is also broken.
Yeah.
We after World War II, we started having something called the Green Revolution, which is a real misnomer because it was really the ugly Black Death revolution, because it was, let's fertilize everything, let's spray everything, let's loads of sides, loads of visors, and let's basically create a doom loop in the soil where we plow, kill everything, and then because we've killed everything, we've got to inject a whole bunch new life. And as soon as you do that, the pioneering species that want to come back first are the weeds. So then you start killing things again, which just means that all the plants that you grow are weaker, which is why in that kind of currently conventional farming system, we have less nutrient density in all of our food. Like you have to eat 8 carrots now to get the same kind of nutrients that you would from a carrot that was grown in the 1920s. So we thought the only way we can have an opinion on the food system is if we have a stake in the ground.
Yeah.
And I suppose we got quite lucky. When I was in my early 20s, I was obsessed with the idea of having a vineyard. Like, weirdly, I lived in Hong Kong at the time. Like, what was that about? And I bought all these books and I read everything about organic winemaking and grape growing and everything. And then I was like, what am I doing? This is ridiculous. I live in Hong Kong. And I put all those books away. And then we bought this farm and we started doing soil studies and testing and talking to a bunch of local people, and it just so turns out that our grade 3 degraded pasture, which is also south facing slope in the North Downs, sort of a chalk profile, is literally perfect for vines. So now we have a vineyard, which is bizarre, but we're doing it's a complete regenerative agricultural approach, which means there's sort of 5 principles behind what we do. We armor the soil, we maintain living roots in the soil, and we do not disturb the soil. So the first 3 principles are about, you love your soil is gold, you treat it like the queen that she is, right? And then the last 2 are, you have to do everything you can to increase biodiversity, and you have to involve livestock, because I can't eat grass and turn it into fertilizer.
No.
So part of why farming has also gone wrong is you've got all these livestock farms over here where they're just doing intensive cattle production. Like in North America, 99% of beef is feedlot beef. It's awful. And then you've got your wheat farm somewhere else, and there's no animals there. So what we have holistic planned grazing with sheep in the vineyard. We've designed the vineyard around sheep. Even in an organic vineyard in the UK, people would spray copper sulfate for the mildews, but that would kill sheep, so we wouldn't do it. Also, I wouldn't put copper in a glass of water and drink it, so I'm not comfortable with that. We wouldn't use glyphosate here. We wouldn't use nematicides, fungicides. I mean, the whole thing that makes the soil vibrant and alive are the fungal networks within it.
Yeah.
Yet we're obsessed with fungicides. It's just bizarre, right?
Yeah.
Instead of being obsessed with the complexities of life, any problem that we encounter as a species, we seem to want to kill it. And it's just a weird approach, right? And I think I've learned so much about what underpins the business by being here at the farm, because it's the same set of values.
Yeah.
We've always thought with the business, like, let's have multiple positive objectives. Why just rescue fire hose when we could rescue fire hose, make really beautiful things, challenge the luxury industry, give half the money to firemen, and run everything on renewable energy and create our own wastewater treatment system. And we've always thought the best way to do better is to do more. And with the farm, it's actually that same theory of abundance. So instead of thinking, we've got red spider mites, how are we going to kill those? We're like, how do we create the most awesome ecosystem so that when red spider mites come, it's not really a big deal, because we also have ladybirds, and ladybirds love to eat red spider mites. So you've got you've got a balanced ecosystem, so you don't have to worry about one particular outlier. There's an amazing farmer in Australia who's done a lot of work on understanding what makes a healthy plant. And she studies basically like Brix levels, sugar levels in the leaves and things like that. And a Brix level of 14 or higher, these plants are healthy. These plants do not need any chemical treatment. They do not need any help. They're resistant to all the things that can go wrong, because bacteria and fungi like the bad fungi or whatever, they feed on decaying things.
Yeah.
Not on things that are alive and vibrant and healthy. So the goal here is to have really interstellar, healthy plants. And of course, then we're going to make the best wine in the world, because it's because of how it's made. Obviously there'll be wine critics when we get to that stage that'll be like, oh, blah blah blah, it doesn't taste like a this or a that, and that won't really bother me, because the thing that I'm going to be proud of is how it's made.
Yeah. And
I think wine is narrative driven. And I think that there are people, as long as our wine isn't disgusting, I think we'll find an audience for it. I just think that if we continue to if we respect the grape the same way we respected the land, then we're going to end up with something pretty spectacular.
Yeah, I mean, I find it hard to believe that you could possibly make a wine that doesn't taste good when you put that much love and care into how it's made.
Yeah.
How long does it take to go from? Sorry, I don't have the vocabulary for all of this, but from an environment that is so sort of neglected and bad quality.
Oh, how can you feel
that is fully balanced? And
well, we are lucky it's degraded pasture, but there wasn't anyone doing chemical farming here, right? So it just was, they just had free ranging goats and sheep and horses, which means the soil was compacted, but the soil wasn't full of chemicals at all. So we had that definitely in our favor. If you have gone from a field that's where you've had a lot of chemical treatment, but like, I think the switch over to organic is 7 years. Like, I think that's basically the rule there now. We could go organic from day one because we didn't have that issue with the chemicals here. But what's amazing to me is how, like, we had no earthworms when we first came. Any of the holes we dug, there was no earthworms. And we started spraying our compost tea. So we collect food waste, organic horse manure and cow manure, and we mix that with wood chip waste, and we make these beautiful hot composts. And then we extract the microbiology from that, just in the way you would cold brew a tea. And then we spray that tea onto the land. Like, you could make compost and then just spread that on the land, but you would need to make so much of it that it would just be, you'd have to have a team of 10, 15 people just making compost. So the idea about the compost tea is that you can achieve the same microbiological effect, but with basically less people and less input materials. And we've got worms everywhere now. So we've only been putting our compost teas on for just over a year, I think, since the first brew went out. And it's incredible, the difference that's been made. That's absolutely incredible. We didn't have dung beetles here, and now we do. I think some things can come back really quickly. But in terms of having a really balanced ecosystem here, it's going to take a while, because we planted 3,000 trees, but some of them were this big. So those don't grow overnight. And we had a drought last summer. So, and then even the vines themselves, vines take 3 to 4 years to be producing fruit. So from your, going back to the whole financial discipline thing, the cash flow plan that I had to build was one where there was not going to be any money coming from the vineyard for let's say 5 years. That's what we priced in.
I did go on a tour in a vineyard that must be pretty close to you, actually, in Kent. Was it Wayfarer or something like that? Okay. That talking to them about the business model. It's a pretty hard business to be in, isn't it? When you've got nature playing against you with, you don't know when the frosts are going to come, or which summers are going to be hot or wet, or
and that's why for us we've also planted lots of really interesting things like cobnuts, sea buckthorn, fruit trees. We haven't planted our vines. So like a lot of vineyards, the vines would be 1.5 meters apart. Our alleyways are 3 meters wide, and that's so we can do other things there. So we are looking at it like, yes, wine is a focus, but it's not entirely what we do. It's a part of what we do, but it isn't the whole. It isn't the whole setup. There has to be other ways for this site to wash its face.
No, exactly. Well, I'm conscious that we've been talking for over half an hour, and I know that I could talk to you for ever and ever. But I suppose in terms of like just taking all of the knowledge and wisdom that you have, what would be sort of one key bit of advice for any sort of female entrepreneurs out there that are wanting to, go and have their mark on the world and be aligned with their values, etc.?
I think it starts a little bit with knowing yourself. Like, you make a list of what your skills are, what your assets are. And then also make a list of what are the things that really, really drive you, really push you forward. What are the things you're super curious about? What are the problems that you just keep you up at night? And then work out where the patterns are between the skills that you've got and the problems that you want to solve. And maybe that exercise will tell you that you don't want to actually set up a business, that what you want to do is work for an NGO, or you want to work in a big corporate that's undergoing a massive shift from one way of working to another. Or maybe it tells you that actually the thing you want to do just isn't being done by anyone anywhere. And that pretty much means you're going to have to set up the first way of doing that. So I just think it's that kind of evaluation of what can I contribute? And then if there's some skills that you're missing, but you just go out and get them. I'm consistently amazed at what you can learn on the internet. Elvis and I have thought about whether we should set up some sort of alternative business school here that's for people who are more passionate about solving problems than about money, and just want to have the practical tools in order to evaluate their theories, go forward and try things. Or whether maybe we should incubate some of those things here. And by incubate, I just mean here's a desk, here's Wi-Fi, here's people that you can bounce ideas off of. I think there's not enough of that in society. And I had loads of that when I set up my first business in Hong Kong. What I had in abundance was mentorship. I didn't have, I was in my early 20s. I didn't have anyone who said, is this really a good idea? I had a bunch of people going, do you need a desk? Do you need some cash? Do you need me to pay the rent this month? Do you need, who do you need to talk to about that? Oh, do you want to talk to my friend who he does something similar? And, I mean, that was the ecosystem I was in at the time. And I really think there's not enough of that. There's not enough of that.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the reasons why I've just started heading up a women's network. And I think part of my reason for wanting to do that is I really believe that when we pull all of our skills together and we help each other out, that it is about collaboration and not competition, and that we all have something that we can help somebody else with, and that together we can create so much more than we can if we're just on our own. I think that's really important to consider that.
Yeah, agreed. And I think the really interesting thing is, as soon as you get into this impact space, that spirit of generosity and collaboration just explodes. When we came to the farm here and we knew we wanted to do regenerative agriculture, we just started calling people, and we were calling people and emailing people that are famous, that have their own podcasts in California, and they're like at the forefront of biodynamic winemaking. Everybody, we got replies from people saying, let's jump on a Zoom. Oh, can I talk to you about where your fruit and wire should be? We were so overwhelmed at the generosity that we were met with. And the impact space is filled with wonderful people like that.
Yeah, I think that's really encouraging. Yeah, it's lovely. So, and just for anyone that's interested in finding out more about what you do, about your products, obviously this broadcast is linked to your LinkedIn as well. There's links to it. But how else can people get in touch with you?
So just come to elvisandkresse.com. That's our website. And also on there's a whole link to our workshop and farm tours that we offer, which is just something that we're going to run because they're sort of consistently oversubscribed. But yeah, we're pretty easy to track down. We're farmers now. We've got sheep. We can't go anywhere. Yeah.
I was going to ask if you're going to, it's probably a silly question, but are you going to be doing anything with all the wool that comes from the sheep? But I guess the answer has to be yes.
Well, at the moment, we've got our sheep are hair sheep, so they shed which is just like completely different. And we do collect up all of the sheddings that are in big clumps, and we use it as mulch in and around the vines. So yeah, we are using it on farm.
Love it. Yeah, that's brilliant.
There's only 8 of them. It's not enough to set up a sweater making business, that's for sure.
Not yet.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Kresse. I really appreciate it. Your time is valuable. So thank you so much. Really, really fascinating. I'm sure that anyone watching will have got lots of value from that as well. So thank you so much.
No, thanks. Lovely to chat with you, Claire.
Thank you.